Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching this special edition of The Factor, Election 2016. Let's get straight to our top story. Big reaction to our interview with Donald Trump yesterday. Mr. Trump refused to back down after stating this week that he would not take using nuclear weapons in the Middle East or Europe off the table if he were president.
Europe's a big place. I'm not going to take cards off the table. The last person to use nuclear would be Donald Trump. That's the way I feel. I think it is a horrible thing. The thought of it is horrible. But I don't want to take anything off the table.
Trump added that we need to negotiate. He also tried to clarify his comments on abortion, where he seemed to say that if the procedure were to become illegal, women who get one should receive some form of punishment.
Could be that I misspoke, but this was a long, convoluted subject. We talked about Catholicism and his religion, and Chris went back and forth about that. And this was a very long, convoluted discussion, which frankly they don't run on television because it was too long. Mm-hmm. But just as I said it, and I must tell you, this is the same. My stance is the same stance as Ronald Reagan, and if in fact abortion was outlawed, the person performing that act is responsible, not the woman.
Hillary Clinton supporters are running wild with it. Take a look at the new ad from one of the biggest super PACs backing Mrs. Clinton.
It'd be a pretty picture you drop into.
John and Dennis.
You wouldn't have your job if you weren't beautiful.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
There has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
So given Trump's controversial stance, is he giving a pile of ammunition to Democrats? Joining us now with reaction from Washington, former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich. So, Newt, I'll ask you plain and simple. Rough week for Donald Trump?
Yeah, it was a rough week, but I want to distinguish the two things you just played. His position on nuclear weapons is exactly right. It's the position of Ronald Reagan. It's the position of Gerald Ford. It's the position of Jimmy Carter. It was the position of Richard Nixon. It was the position of John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson and Dwight Eisenhower. You can't be in a world where there are 5,000 Russian nuclear weapons, a world where the Iranians are trying to get a nuclear weapon, and then say, oh, I will never, ever use them. And so I think what he was doing was actually pretty sophisticated, more sophisticated than some of our liberal friends who take things off the table that they can't possibly mean. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one where I'd give Trump, it was absolutely correct. On the other one, right. Man, if you're a conservative and you sit down with Chris Matthews, you need to have your head examined.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, really, and you have to have that answer. You know it's coming. You know it's going to come in a form that you're not going to be able to talk or explain yourself. It feels, and look, it feels like you walked into a buzzsaw with that.
We did, and it's not his position that Super PAC ad is a lie. They know it's a lie, but he made the mistake. It was like an error in baseball. I mean, it was his error. Now he's got to go back and clean it up. Now, I think presently you get Donald Trump on television often enough saying, look, it's the doctor, not the woman. I would not punish the woman. He'll eventually erase it. But what happens when you're a rookie, and remember, as brilliant as he's been, as much as he is the front runner, this is the first time he's ever been in an election campaign. And rookies make some mistakes as they're learning, and he's made over the last couple of weeks 3 or 4 doozies, and he's going to have to clean them up. Now, he's still the front runner, and he's still the guy in the best position to win the nomination, but he has had, I think, a pretty tough 2 weeks.
So, but the liberal media is making a lot, aside from the PACs, the liberal media is making a lot of hay out of this. Worst week ever, this is it, but we've heard that before.
Well, for 2 things. First of all, I think he's not going to do well in Wisconsin, but he's not going to get wiped out. So he'll come out of Wisconsin. He'll still be the front runner. He'll still have more delegates. Every indication we have right now is he's going to win New York by a huge margin, more than 2-1 over Cruz. So he ought to come out of New York having actually increased his lead in a significant way. This could well be a wake-up call for him. I remember in early September 1980, Reagan made a couple of boo-boos in a row, and there was a real worry, and they finally brought an old pro on the plane and got him to settle Reagan down, somebody Reagan had known back in the gubernatorial days in California. But they had a couple of really rough days, and a lot of us who were very pro-Reagan, we were frankly a little worried that if that kept going, that he'd be in a hole. Remember, Reagan was 25 points behind Carter in March and beat Carter by 11. That is a swing of 36 percentage points between March and November. So I think in the end, whether it's Trump or Cruz or Kasich, we're going to beat the Democratic nominee. And I think that I ultimately like our position a lot better than theirs.
So you make a very, very good point. Momentum. Momentum in politics is so important. And the timing of the next couple of weeks is very interesting. As you point out, Ted Cruz has a double-digit lead possibly in Wisconsin. So if he goes ahead and wins Wisconsin, you got a 2-week period there. You have 2 weeks before you come back east, where Donald Trump is very strong in New York. He's very strong in New Jersey. He's very strong in other states up here. Is there time to get that momentum back? And what should he be doing for those 2 weeks? Resting? I mean, rest might be a good thing, too.
Wait a second. First of all, if you will remember, and I'm certainly one of the people guilty of this, none of us have gotten him right all year. I mean, the number of times people, including me, have said, boy, that was really that one's going to stop him, and he just rolled right on. So I'm going to start and suggest to you, the only time the Cruz can get enough momentum in Wisconsin is if he sweeps it. If he does to Trump what Trump did in Arizona and in South Carolina, if it comes out every delegate's for Cruz, then Cruz gets some momentum. But let's say Cruz wins a modest victory. He picks up 2/3 of the delegates, but Trump picks up a third. And the guy who really has a lot at stake here is Kasich. I mean, Kasich's got to win something in Wisconsin in order to have any hope of moving on into Pennsylvania, where he hopes to have a really good night. All Trump has to do, because of his genius at getting earned media, he should do 2 or 3 big speeches, much like his AIPAC speech, using a teleprompter, serious, thoughtful, substantive. And it's very obvious, if you're a conservative, the first speech ought to be on the Supreme Court. What are the characteristics of the judges he'd pick? Maybe even have a list of the judges that he'd pick from. That will automatically give him momentum again. And 2 or 3 speeches over that 2-week period, if they're done right, he'll enter the New York primary back with momentum.
Address some of the people, on the right, Republicans, who say they won't vote for Donald Trump if he's the nominee. I mean, I'm not. Look, isn't that a vote for Hillary Clinton? And you point out something very important. If Hillary Clinton is the next president, you have at least, I don't know, maybe 2, maybe a third Supreme Court justice that may be a Democrat.
Well, look, you've got 3 or 4 really big things with Hillary Clinton. She is even more pro-union boss than Obama. So you're not going to get any reform of schools. You're going to continue to let children be ruined by the teachers' unions, such as Chicago, where they went out on strike. Detroit, where 91% of the children are failing their tests. Hillary Clinton's going to be with the union and against the kids. Second, she's going to bring the corruption that we've already seen with the Clinton Foundation. This will be the most corrupt White House in American history. Third, she's already proven she's totally irresponsible on national security. And fourth, she's going to continue Obama's policies in the Middle East, which are a disaster. So add that to the Supreme Court, and you have to look these conservatives in the eye and say, you're really prepared to do that to America because you don't like Donald Trump? I mean, it strikes me that in the end, a few of them, because they're really stubborn, will go off and form the Suicide Club. But everybody else in the end is going to say, no, I'm going to help beat Hillary Clinton because I just can't stand the idea.
All right, before we let you go, I have to ask you, you've been very complimentary of Donald